Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back. It is Monday, September 2nd. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, grannies and gators, we are going to have a slight change of plan as to regular scheduled broadcasting today. We will not be doing the usual From the Roots. What we have is something that I think is far more critically sensitive in the Department of Time for all Canadians to get fully up to speed on, not like right now, but like right freaking now. And what we're going to hear today, we've got a special guest. We've got lawyer Lisa in the house, who is a hidden gem in uncovering the diabolical crime sprees, in my opinion, going on in Canada. And I think this episode is going to tie together some seriously critical dots onto why Trudeau refuses to step down. He is adamant that he has more to do. So it's going to answer that question, and it's going to answer why is Trudeau stacking the deck in the Senate with such panic and fury and reckless abandon. It's going to answer that, and it's going to connect some seriously diabolical points along the way. So this is going to be critical information for all Canadians to get plugged into. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in the brilliant Lisa, lawyer Lisa. Thank you so much for finding some time to join us today, Lisa, and bring us up to speed on something that I think, if we weren't really aware of this, would blindside people because of the terminology and the fact that none of us read real legalese. So just to set up how we come to be, we only first started chatting yesterday, and this happened because James Roguski, who's a regular on our show and keeps us well informed of what the WHO is doing, reached out to me and said, Dwayne, I've got an article I'm putting together. I think this is critical information. Will you give me your thoughts on it? And I went through it. And my immediate response was, and I'm going to read this word for word what I said to James. I said, wow, James, they've married up climate change and controlling food supply under the Preparedness Act. They're planning to do it again the instant they get this pushed through the Senate, is my opinion. And he says, you're absolutely on point. You need to talk to lawyer Lisa about this bill's Preparedness Act, that the mumbo jumbo that we have dialed out to in Canada is going to blindside us right chicken Louie. So to start that off with, tell us who you are, as if I'm not putting you on the spot yet.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's an all hands on deck moment. So if you're meeting me for the first time here, I'm here to help you with this hands on deck moment. I'm a lawyer of 24 years. I do have an environmental science degree with a minor in chemistry. I cut my teeth on the first SARS case. I represented the family of Nelia La Rosa, and the truckers woke me up, and I started digging, and I have not stopped digging. I look at this bill, and it ties so much together. It ties the smart city. It ties us getting into the smart city, taking us out of the rural communities, right? It's a war on meat. It's a war on agriculture, right? It actually talks about eating bugs in that it specifies investments in alternative proteins. So all that, stuff about bugs you heard, it's coming to root. And let's back up for a second. This is a bill. This is a bill that's named the Pandemic Preparedness and Prevention, or Prevention and Preparedness Act. Okay.
I'll bring this up here, so just so people can see, this is the real bill that we're talking about, and then we're going to rewind this story a little bit as to where you get plugged into all this. And this is, guys, this is absolute conspiracy. you guys that have watched this show, we have been uncovering the infiltration of the World Economic Forum, the public-private partnerships. You're well rehearsed on all of that information. This is where it plugs into the legislation. So this is, what the barrel of the cannel is called C-293, and this is where it's at. Yeah.
This is a gun, and we have to disarm the government.
Wow.
The laws are working against us. This is not about preventing any kind of pandemic, right? If it was about preventing a pandemic, would it look at all the labs? Would it look at lab leaks? Would it look at funding labs? Would it look at all the organizations that have conflicts of interest? Would it make having a pandemic not profitable? Would it look at the WHO? Would it look at Tedros and what he did in Ethiopia before, which is a dry run? He was accused of genocide in his own country, of speech repression, of arresting podcasters, journalists, and torturing and disappearing people. Right? That's the guy at the WHO. And what they've been doing at the WHO, we're looking at, right? Can we stop it? I don't know. But they've domesticated it. They've put it in legislation that's about to go live. It's passed 3 readings of the House, right? Thank you, sellout Singh. We know why you're there, right? It's passed 1 reading of the Senate, and the Senate goes back on the 17th. So this, my friends, is an all hands out on deck. And if people think, well, COVID's not coming back and stop talking about it, this is about what the food you put on your plate. This is about where you live, right? This is bigger and broader, and it is a war on GDP. Brings in the Ministry of Agriculture, brings in the Ministry of Industry, right? So this is a massive wake up. Tell the Senate we're not going to have it. And remember, Canada can lead the way. These bills are marching out in infrastructure everywhere. And so we need to show the world that we're a light and that we can stop the Senate. It's up to us. We have to help the rest of the world, and we have to help each other, and we have to help Canadians. This is it. And I know you have an email that I had shared to the author of this bill.
Yeah, I just want to kind of put another little smear of icing on what you were saying there, and for this is about the food supply. This is about the climate change, all being wrapped in under pandemic treaty policy, which means there is no policy, which means Tedros and Klaus take the wheel, and it's comply or else. And this is, this close to being passed, neck and neck with Bill C-63 that puts me and you in jail for doing exactly what we're doing right here, right now, waving the flag, saying, wake up, this is on deck. This is where we're at right now. Just to, I don't want to lose for people to, to be, demoralized by the urgency. I want them to be empowered by the urgency. This is our moment where we have to get it together right now. This is not conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. And this ties the dots on so many of those things. But now we're going to roll the dial back in time a little bit to an email. And so tell us where this goes, Lisa, and when this happened.
Okay, so I sent an email to all the MPs because I was worried about what was happening at the WHO. And I got a few responses, okay? And I was worried about national sovereignty and Canadians' personal health freedom with respect to what was moving at the WHO. And just as an aside, a lot of people say, well, it doesn't deal with sovereignty. The WHO issues don't deal with sovereignty. If they can tax us and they're not accountable, they're performing the functions of the state. If they can embed their employees inside our government, they're performing the functions of the state. If they can tell us what economies run and which ones don't, they are performing the functions of the state. If they can imprison people for speech, they're taking away charter rights, and they are performing in a very horrific way the functions of the state. So the idea that, I don't know what sovereignty has to look like when it passes over to a globalist, but if they're doing the functions of the state, then it is attacking our sovereignty. So you can look at the WHO after with James Rogunsky, but make sure that all the questions, it's not merely whether or not there's a vax passport and you're traced or tracked or what you have to take in your arm. It's what they can do by embedding themselves in our state. So I was concerned, and I wrote, and this was my email, and I was worried that the people of Canada face the loss of our inalienable rights to personal sovereignty and bodily autonomy, also known as the right of informed consent. Okay, I wrote this, and I demanded that you immediately use powers of your office to investigate and stop this foreign and domestic threat to sovereignty and survival of the country and its people. I wrote this in October of 2022. Okay, we got a response, and I know that you can put that up next. Okay, so he thanked me. It was written by a staff member, okay, on behalf. He said he's, read the email, and then he encourages me, or his staff, the office encourages me to listen to his podcast that Nate recorded with MP Michelle Rempel Garner of the conservative Calgary News Hill, okay? Says this episode covers conspiracy theories and subjects that have recently been targets of misinformation and disinformation, including the WF, basic income, COVID vaccines, C10, C11, and more. But of course, that's down, by the way. I didn't listen to it at the time. That came down. If these issues are important to you, since you are taking the time to email our office, we strongly encourage you to listen to this episode. Okay? Nate regularly comments on current events on social media, Facebook, etc. Okay? Subscribe to Nate. It's on Commons podcast. Okay, so he's telling people, when I write him, he's telling people, this is information that's disinformation and misinformation and a conspiracy theory. Who was the author of this bill? And I think we can pull up that bill now. And that the author of this bill, an act respecting pandemic prevention and preparedness, was Nathaniel Erskine Smith of Beaches, East York. Now, he's apparently not seeking re-election.
Imagine that.
Right? He's done his job. This was his job. This was his job. This was his job. And they say, okay, private members' bills. I remember, advancing another, don't worry, these things are never passed. Well, this private members' bill had its first reading June 17th, 2022. Back up to my email. My email to him was in October 2022. So he's literally telling me it's a conspiracy theory as he conspires in a public fashion to put forth a bill that is essentially the domestication of the WHO horror story. And so in June of 7, so let's think about this progress, okay? It must have been drafted before June 17th, 2022. And then he brings it forward. It had its first reading June 17th, 2022. It then, has its next reading February 8th, 2023. Okay, goes to committee October 27th, 2023. Report stage completed June 3rd, 2024. Third reading Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. It's at the Senate. It completed its first reading June 6th, 2024. And we're going to go in provision by provision and tell you, make your notes, write down with your own words why you're horrified with this bill, okay? Why the Senate has to stop. And we'll talk about the things that we're aware of, but we got to broaden this and make other Canadians understand just how important this bill is. Okay. The Senate goes back, I think, on the 17th of this month. So September 17th. It is the 2nd. It's time to make some noise, Canada. It's time to make
Well,
some noise.
there's so much that's going to be connecting dots to our community out there. They know who signed us on to these bills, albeit this particular candidate, this Nathaniel Erskine Smith, hasn't really been on the radar of this platform, but we fully understand what Michelle Rempels Garner's role in the crime spree of Canada, where it comes to play in this. She's I would put her on the, and this is just my opinion, on the evil Richter scale, right next to Chrystia Freeland when it comes to the dark side of the illusion. And this, we fully understand that both of these parties, the mainstream parties, the liberals and the conservatives, are signed on to all of this. The only thing that they're competing for is who gets to drive the bus off the cliff while we're locked in the trunk. That's really the essence of this. And this is why Trudeau wants to be the future statue of bringing in the first post-nation state of, called Canada. And why the path out is understanding that you're absolutely right in questioning the impact on our sovereignty. And once again, what they're doing, what they're telling you, is proving to, or should be proving to, Canadians that we don't actually, are not proving to them, but helping them understand that these pseudo documents that they govern us with have no bearing in effect so long as we don't actually have a de jure sovereign country. That's a whole other conversation. We just had that on Wednesday talking about constitutional conventions. And this comes, in every time I see a discussion with a sitting MP, and I've had my own, and sitting down with one of them, asking him, uh, do you want to save Canada? Then we need to have a lawful Canada, not a de facto Canada. This is why we don't get recognized, and so much of what we're doing means absolutely nothing. But this is again one of those things. They're going to do what they're going to do because they know we don't actually have the power to stop them. The solution for that is another matter. But we have to keep fighting these fights right now because these are the ones of urgency that they're using. That's a down the road discussion, but this is a way to stop these guys from getting these policies to this place in the first place. Right now, this is the critical existential threat. If they pass this in this thing called government, they're going to give themselves a justification. Oh, you don't like them culling your cattle and your chickens? You're going to go to jail. This ties them. This is part of that, the seven rings that bind us kind of thing. This is one of those major rings that allows them to arbitrarily show up at your doorstep and say, oh, well, we think you broke this crime or this rule.
One thing I want to say is we bring the morality to our government. We do. We, the people. And so I don't want to give up on the vestiges of the architecture that sets up a proper government. And so to the extent that what we are seeing right now is subversion of our government by globalists that have happened, steadily over time. The reason why we have to be taught to hate our history is so that we reject our government. They would not be working so hard against our government, against our history, if our government actually couldn't hold them to account. So don't give up on it yet. We have to infuse it with the morality that comes from the people. And when you saw the trucker movement, which I actually believe, and this is just a small aside, that was a sort of a CSIS operation in order to get the idea of the Emergency Act and martial law out. It just went offside on them. It went completely offside. It came on masse. En masse Canadians showed up. And that is when you saw Pierre Poilievre stepping up. Because the people can demand and get a moral government. They haven't been able to yet. We have not succeeded. But don't give up. The reason they're fighting for our mindset on this so badly is they are afraid that we hold them account through our government. So they're using government to put in these horrible bills, right? And I often say I have a Substack, LawyerLisa at Substack.com. I often say letters put together to spell tyranny, spell nothing, right? We have laws where there is no moral obligation to obey them, right? Because if you're, right, what would you say to Germany in 1930s? You'd say, if your laws compel you to do evil acts, they are immoral laws. Now, people think because they've been laid down, they are what binds us. They are what holds us. They are not what holds us. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty on this bill. And as we go through it, we have to go through it. We will tell people what notes to take, right? And how to push back at the Senate, why it's evil, push back with, other friends, colleagues, whoever they know. So, can we pull up the act itself and start reading it?
Sure can. So here.
Text of our bill, yeah. Okay, so it's passed. That's the first thing. Now, in the summary, if we can just blow it up, and you and I have to get together on the embedding of the WHO in our Ministry of Health and our public health. Okay. So first of all, it enables the Minister of Health to establish in consultation with other ministers, pandemic prevention and preparedness plan. Okay. It's to include information provided by those ministers. Okay. It amends the Department of Health Act to provide that the Minister of Health must appoint a national pandemic prevention and preparedness coordinator. From among the officials of the Public Health Agency of Canada. I will take you through on a different talk on how those people are straight from the WHO to coordinate the activities under the Pandemic Prevention and Preparedness Act. So they're going to appoint people who are actually foreign actors. They really are. Okay. But that's going to take a whole talk. And so let's go through further. Okay. Now, when you look at this, okay, the costs of prevention preparedness measures are insignificant compared to the human and economic costs of the pandemic. Yeah, well, depends who's running the pandemic. Whereas prevention,
What they want to
Parliament
define as a pandemic.
Right. Okay. And we're going to build on some lessons, and they've got a One Health approach. I want you to sit and think of this because this is completely satanic. Because it puts, well, let's read it. One Health, a multi-sectoral, a multidisciplinary collaborative approach that focuses on the human, animal, plant, ecosystem health, and welfare interface. That's how humans interface with governments. That is central. Okay, so it's got to focus on everything under the sun. So they're giving themselves, right, the right to govern, to prevent a pandemic.
That's how we get a river with human rights is what they're telling us, this garbage now.
Right?
And if you go and look at it sideways, you're going to be a crook.
Your welfare interface is how you interact with your government in every single way. So there is nothing they cannot regulate. There's nothing they haven't given to this WHO individual that gets appointed through public health. There's nothing they haven't given them to govern it. And whereas this approach requires sustained, like so all the time, collaboration among various ministers, we're going to review the Minister of Industry. This is anti-GDP. The Ministry of Agriculture. Okay, this is anti-food. This is anti-farming. And all levels of government and Indigenous communities.
This is
So
you don't want to be DEI compliant. You're a threat. You're a threat, and we need to declare a pandemic because you don't want to comply to DEI or whatever they want to basically come up with.
okay, so the purpose of the act is to prevent the risk and prepare for future pandemics. The future, has to come. There's got to be more, and promote transparency and accountability in relation to the government and its efforts to do so. Now, nowhere does it look at lab leaks, and what research is being funded, who's doing that research. Are bad actors receiving Winnipeg? Can you buy these viruses online? Doesn't look at that. Doesn't look at anything with respect to unaccountable NGOs and how they have conflicts of interest with the people who profit the most from pandemics. Tell me how you're compensated, and I'll tell you how the world's going to look. This is
I think
Gabby
Michelle Rempel, having worked at the Winnipeg Biolab for 14 years, should be the one to answer some of those questions.
Oh, that's interesting. So they have to set out mitigation. Okay, what must the plan look like? Mitigation strategies that the Ministry of Health intends to implement. To prevent the risk of and prepare for disease outbreaks that could lead, right? Anything that could lead to pandemics. Okay, and the timeline for their implementation. Identify key drivers of pandemic risk. Now, I went on my Substack, and you can look at the Substack. I went to the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. What are the risks of pandemic? Well, that's your climate change, growing crops, all agriculture, right? Growing crops and industrial agriculture, all of it, right? It includes, hey, where are you living? Are you infiltrating somehow, where other species live? Like, do you have a cottage, right? Do you live in a rural community? Well, that may increase a pandemic. So that you have to go into my Substack to get really the nuts and bolts on how public health is tying all this stuff together. But don't worry, the Act does it too. Okay, so sustained a collaboration between the Ministry of Health and provincial governments and Indigenous communities on the development of a plan. So on the Indigenous communities, we constantly hear that, life was better if we had the Indigenous way of life. But and there's nothing wrong with that opinion, but at least they got to hunt and eat meat, which it seems like meat is out of the picture in this act. So, they suck and blow in terms of, well, they're going to.
And they're the only ones that can hunt and fish year round anytime they want, using whatever means they want.
And, I think we have to be very careful, because I know a lot of people in the Indigenous community who are freedom fighters, a lot, and who believe in the freedom fighters. I think what happens is power occupies an area and weaponizes it. If Trudeau cared, why is it that they always get the first vaccines? If Trudeau cared, why don't they have water? If Trudeau cared, right, he's weaponizing them. And so it would be so much nicer if we could bring them into the fold to fight for Canada as well.
That's the point, is they've used identity politics and wedge issues to divide every single person that wants to that has been abused and righteously claims being victims. They have separated and segregated us so that there is no equality. People want to talk about 2-tier society. How about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-tier society, which is what they've turned Canada into. And until we get to a point where it doesn't matter whether I'm a Quebec Canadian, I'm an Indigenous Canadian, it doesn't matter. We got to strip all of that and fight for all dang Canadians. We cannot willingly separate ourselves on any of these, and that goes with love to the Indian community that's out there. They have to embrace all of this. They can't fight for just one side of it.
That's right, and I think that they could be a very powerful voice to push back.
They need to be.
Yep. So let's give them the tools and go through this further. So they have to provide training programs, collaborative activities with other levels of government, Indigenous communities, and relevant agencies. And when we look at the plan, and I've written about this on my Substack, that got put in place in New Zealand after they had this type of legislation, it included that those in charge of civil authority can help with anything that the Minister of Health is doing to prevent a pandemic. That could be quarantining. And civil authority includes the police, and then they can quarantine anything, right? The police can use force to quarantine. It's people, places, things in New Zealand. That's this relevant agencies, okay? And Canada amended the National Defence Act to make the Army in charge of civil authority. Now you think about that. It'll be the first time that the Army is ever used against Canadians, right? We went from our Army is for peacekeeping to our Army can be used against Canadians. That's the National Defence Act. Okay, and Trudeau and Blair announced that. And then I found a CBC article that Blair's saying he can't fast track new immigrants into the Army fast enough. So let's park that. Ensure the standards and guidelines that pertain to the pandemic risks are aligned with the approach described. Describe the state of research, yada, as okay. Provide and establish an interlinking of surveillance systems. That's your smart city, right? That's your vaccine passport. That's known online. That's known in the real world, right? What we're seeing with Bill C10, C11, and that you are known online is that you also have to be known in the smart city infrastructure. That's why it's all going through as quickly as possible. And to find out more of that, you got to go to completestreetsforcanada.ca. There's a map. Describe the state of research relating to preventing and responding to infectious disease that could lead to a pandemic, right? And that's where climate gets involved. And establishment of interlinking surveillance systems for infectious disease. Okay, that's likely your electronic vaccine passports. 5
biometric surveillance,
right? That's your biometrics. But 5 countries starting in September in the EU are debuting their vaccine passports, their electronic vaccine passports. Okay, so let's go further down. Okay, oh, just not quite so much. So here, when you look at the, right, a little bit further.
Down or up?
I want to go back. Yeah. Okay, there, the plan. Okay, the mitigation strategies to prevent the risk and prepare for disease outbreaks that could lead, identify the key drivers, and describe how Canadian activities, domestic and abroad, contribute to the risk. So that's pretty broad. Anywhere a Canadian is, right? Anything that you're doing as a Canadian, domestically and abroad, can contribute to the pandemic risk. Like, are you driving a car, right? This is very, very broad. It's broad that it encompasses everything under the sun under One Health. It's broad in that it's Canadian activities, domestic and abroad. There's no place that you are in this world that you are not covered by this legislation. There's no escaping this legislation. Okay?
Wow. This would even make Orwell cringe.
This should make Orwell cringe. Describe the state in relation to preventing and responding to infectious disease that could lead to pandemics. There's your provide the establishment and interlinking surveillance systems for infectious disease in Canada. So you're interlinking surveillance systems. So what's it going to interlink, right? This allows them to make control over our internet that surveils us, right? Our DEI, our professional bodies, all our communications, us in the real world, in here and now, wherever we are, to surveil us, and our vaccine passports. I did a Substack in 2017. The EU studied what were the impediments to chipping its citizens. What were the moral and legal impediments to chipping its citizens? Everything that Brussels does comes here. So, they talked about what would be a bar to it. And so some of the human rights legislations are bars to chipping your citizens. But if you have a pandemic treaty like this, you
if
can declare your emergency.
if you imply consent to live like a chipped monkey, they're not forcing you to put one in your hand. You're just willingly going to be dependent upon it, and not soon not be able to function without it. And it's
Right.
everywhere, surrounded.
Play with your palm. But if you're following Dr. Michaela and the nanotech that is
Yep.
being put inside the vaccines,
Yep.
and when I looked at the WEF database over since the 70s or whatever, and it broke down people's what they did for a living, what I was astounded to find was how many nanotech scientists are part of the WEF. It's incredible.
I actually go to West Point Academy's lecture series is that they give their young officers where they're talking about the opportunities of tech, and it's nightmarish what they talk about, as recently as 2020, 2021, the things that at this point, when the reason I go there is because this is where it's becoming declassified and normalized, right?
Yep.
Terrifying.
We have to demystify what's going on in our smart cities. We do have to demystify it. And then support local public health, right? Now let's just, on that point, remember public health in Toronto recently wanted to legalize or decriminalize all hard drugs, meth, right? Opioids, right? In Canada. So when public health says they have our interest, they had no legal limit, right? So that could, it would make trafficking in hard drugs legal, and it had no lower age limit. So it could mean that you couldn't get it out of the schools, right? So public health is a weapon. It's a weapon to us completely. Identify preparedness strategies in respect to marginalized, vulnerable and marginalized populations. I'm not even going to speculate. Working conditions for essential workers, not speculating. And then the availability and management of relevant stockpiles, testing equipment, and personal, your PPE. So this is, again, using our tax dollars on this amazing boondoggle of masking, etc., that doesn't do anything. Okay, the surge capacity of human resources required for testing and contact tracing, right? Oh, so that can start again. And the communication risk to the public. Okay, we're going to go further. So this is the manufacturing capacity in Canada. This is telling us what we're going to have, what our economy is going to be spent on. It's going to have to be relevant to pandemic preparedness, vaccines, testing equipment, PPE.
This is why Deloitte's going into the disease business. This is why Trudeau's announcing, bioweapon jab concoction companies in Canada, and why every one of them has got their names on patents or something to do with a kickback on the disease industry.
Right. And here's how they get the chip in us. The communications capacity and infrastructure for electronic platforms and tools, including electronic applications that enable contact tracing of persons exposed to infectious disease that could lead to pandemics, right? And then, okay, so, right, this is about food, people. And this may be the thing that makes it broader to the broader Canadian audience, right? The Ministry of Agriculture and Agri-Foods, the Ministry of Industry, the provincial governments provide the measures too. Okay, reduce commercial activities that can contribute to pandemic risk. Okay, so in Ministry of Industry, let's just go there. Okay, if they're saying anything that produces CO2 contributes to pandemic risk, right, then all those industries become regulated under this, right? Because you're going to see, if you look at my Substack, that where they're going in public health research is saying that climate change and agriculture are increasing the risk of pandemics. Okay, because you're going into deforested areas. If you're doing agriculture, deforesting, you're going to meet with somebody who's an animal and they're going to infect you. Okay, right? It's not, yeah, it's very tenuous, but that's where they go, including industrial and right, including industrial animal agriculture. This met 3 readings of the House, right? And they're saying animal agriculture. Who's going to get to have animal agriculture, right? We're not going to be able to eat meat at scale. That's what C40 does, right? C40 is about your consumptive interventions. Here's how they tie it together with, it's part of a pandemic risk. And then right underneath, promote commercial activities that can help reduce pandemic risk. So anything that can help, right? So they're going to say that
including the
solar
production
panels.
of alternative proteins.
There's your bugs.
There's your
There's
bug.
your bugs.
There's your crickets.
There's your bugs. You gotta think like the idiot maniacs that they are. And you can't give them a pass on they get to reduce pandemics by you eating bugs.
And
right?
this next one's even more cringe. Phase out commercial activities that disproportionately contribute to pandemic risk, including activities that involve high-risk species. What are high-risk species? Bill Gates is telling us that cows are high-risk species.
Right.
WHO is telling us birds are high-risk species.
But let's just go back to this sentence at 3 there. Promote commercial activities that can help reduce pandemic risk. So if climate change is something that promotes pandemic risk, this necessitates you taking up the EV. This necessitates you taking up the solar panels, the inefficient wind, right? That front ends all the steel and concrete and ore, and it just doesn't even make energy. So these things here, if they get to regulate commercial activities that contribute to pandemic risk, so their views on climate, right? This is what gets them to take out every activity that they say. That's like a war on GDP. And this sentence, promote commercial activities that help reduce pandemic risk, that's your green infrastructure, that's you eating bugs, whatever it is. It's everything. And when they say including just means the first part is anything, and remember, it's anything in relation to plants, animals, ecosystems. These things allow them to regulate everything in Canada, right? This is a comma, including. So this isn't just about industrial animal agriculture, okay? The One Health approach with this sentence here, right? Anything that they think can contribute to pandemic risk, they get to do it under the sun, okay? And then phase out everything that could disproportionately contribute to pandemic risk, not cause a pandemic, right? Just contribute. It's so material, like anything they get to regulate. And then we got to do a follow-up on what's going on with the WHO and our public health, okay? Because that's a big standalone, including activities that involve high-risk species. So yeah, humans might be a high-risk
species.
Right? We're a
100%.
high-risk species.
Yep.
Right? Well, activity. So this can be reproduction.
Yeah, we got to cull some bunnies and some people while we're at it.
Yeah, right. After consultation with the relevant provincial ministries, a summary of change in land use in Canada. There, circle that. A summary, okay. If you doing agriculture, if you having a little homestead, if you living in a rural community, is something that they think contributes to a pandemic, this is the legislation that gets you into these cities in your 350 square feet, right?
There's a snail they want to protect in, 5 miles behind your house, so you need to go
It's
and
a
move into a people coop.
yeah, it's a unicorn. It's a unicorn. It's a salamander that hasn't been seen in years. Okay.
Yeah.
And so anything in relation to disturbed habitats. Okay. So my TH Chan in public health, this is Harvard, has these tenuous things that say, agriculture at all, right? Whether it's growing crops or, animals, disturbs habitats of other animals and contributes to pandemic risk. Wow. So if you're encroaching on wildlife habitat, okay? So if you're not in the city, in a high-rise building with 350 square feet, right?
You're guilty.
You're contributing to a pandemic. This allows them to do everything and anything. And changes of land use can include expropriation. It doesn't have to say it. This can include the closing rural wells. Well, if you don't have any rural wells, you don't have water, right? They get,
Yeah.
and I haven't looked at the Federal Sustainable Development Act. I tend to think this is another demonic entity. This is anti-life, anti-people. This is anti-living, right? And there's no sitting on the sidelines.
It's anti-society, utterly. And this is the carbon blueprint copy that they're implementing in every one of our countries. And this is, one of my biggest peeves right now, honestly, lately, Lisa, is the national fixation with the 11 traitorous compromised individuals in Ottawa. Meanwhile, we're going over this that is policy being implemented by foreign infiltrated operatives on behest of Geneva and Davos, and any person that is championing these policies as edicts out of those unelected foreign bodies is actually probably far more guilty of interfering in Canadians in Canada than even the 11 that they want to stay fixated on. This is why they can't ever tell us who the 11 are, because if we apply the lens of misconduct to those 11, we will discover that the ones that put forth these bills are far more, guilty
Evil,
than they are.
evil. Let's look.
100%.
Now we're going into the Ministry of Environment, right? So now we're going into the Ministry of Red Herring, CO2, climate change. Okay. So fine. Reduce commercial wildlife trade. You know what that means? You're not allowed to hunt, right? You're not allowed to go into the forest and get yourself elk or deer or moose and have something to feed your family with. Okay. Including measures to phase out live animal markets, right? Anything live animal markets. Okay. So I guess the Hutterites, right? Any farmer that wants to give you live animals could be included in this, right? And you think they won't? Swampland in Florida for you. Okay. As summary of measures the Ministry of Environment intends to take to protect global biodiversity, right? Global, right? So all of a sudden, this act has global impact to halt and reverse global deforestation. Well, how would you reverse global deforestation? Well, you'd take all the agriculture and all the communities and you'd roll them into a city. You'd roll them into a city. This is about taking land from people who own land. Okay? And they literally talk about changing land use. They talk about, the Ministry of Environment. They talk about deforestation and reversing it. So how are you reversing it? Well, at one point you can make an argument that any place had forests on it. Any place they want had forests on it. Okay. Then the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
This one's creepy.
This is getting, the way I look at it, immigration right now is about taking away the nation-state borders, the nation-state citizenship, the nation-state charter protections, the nation-state constitution, and putting in the 15-minute border. So in order to do that, you are going to, and it's the thing about the immigrants is if they've come from places that didn't champion freedom, if they've come from places where they've been oppressed, if they've come from places that aren't Canadian, aren't of Western values, they won't know how to fight for what they're losing, right? It's the fastest way to dilute Canadians of any race, because there's Canadians now that have been living here multi-generational that are Canadian in every respect and are freedom fighters, irrespective of race. But when they put every immigrant in here that doesn't know how to champion it, while teaching them that Western values are bad through DEI, what they're doing is trying very, very hard to make the state insignificant. And I'm here to tell you that I believe we have to make the state significant again. That's what they don't want, right? They're here to give us a 15-minute border down the block. And I think that's just a holding pen. Right? That's a ghetto. That's a ghetto. What happens after the ghetto?
People coops, right? It's literally, it's a escape from New York at that time, at that point.
Once they have them in our 15-minute cities, they're ghettos. The ghettos were just the precursor to the next stage. Anybody who thinks like this doesn't stop. They don't stop at us in the smart city. They don't stop at us eating bugs. They don't stop at taking away our property, our rights, our freedom of speech. They don't stop. Right? I don't know. Your audience may have all kinds of levels of denialism, but they don't stop. I'm telling you,
they don't. It's extermination and eradication, 100%. They don't intend to bring the rest of the world up to first world living status. They intend to bring us into the third world, the Holodomor. That's really what they're, to give it a name that people can equate to. This support global health equity. That's not about enriching our lives. Why is it that Canada's pandemic and preparedness platform needs to be concerned with what is equal or is equitable to any other place on the planet? It's absolute absurdity. This is just, every part of this
it allows transfer of wealth is what it does. Is it allows the printing of money and transfer of wealth for whatever purposes they want it to do. But the primary purpose is to take whatever money's left in people's accounts and devalue it through inflation. So anybody who cares about inflation, anybody who cares on the economic side, right? I want to make this discussion as broad as possible, but this is evil. And when I say ghettos, I think they mean extermination, period.
Yeah.
I think they mean extermination, period. And that, my friend, is maybe something that other audiences are not yet prepared to hear. But you got to.
Ours is expecting exactly this. We understand the point of the gulags and the 15-minute cities and the true root of the genocide. We've looked at this going back. This entire plan is actually, if you evolve the Third Reich and add modern day tech, what we're actually seeing is the WEF Fourth Reich under the exact same auspices and people within the government that have facilitated this, and it's the same process that they used in Nazi Germany. And this, all of these are public-private partnerships regurgitated into policy. Public-private partnerships are straight up fascism. What did the fascists do? They built the Auschwitzes and those kinds of things. So, taking the fancy talk off of it, this is by the letter what they're writing into letter of law.
They are. It's difficult to read this, but we're at an all hands on deck moment. There's no way this bill should be allowed to pass. There's no way. There's no way. We have to be at the Senate. We have to be writing our Senate members. And, James Rogunski is going to come out with an email that allows for an automatic right. If you don't agree with what he's put, because he's focusing on a few things, I'm going to help with what the wording is going to be. So hopefully what your readers can start telling everybody to write the Senate, and you write them again and again and again, and you write your MPs and you write again and again and again. So here we get into set out in consultation with relevant ministers, who's relevant, a summary of key operative measures or agreements on disease outbreak prevention preparedness between the government of Canada. This is how you domesticate the WHO without even agreeing with it, okay? Other foreign governments and key international organizations, including the World Health Organization, the United Nations Environment Program. This is about climate change. The World Organization for Animal Health and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. If you go to any of those places and you do any kind of research, they're about phasing out us eating meat. You think they're going to give us B12, right? You think they're going to give us B12? We're going to have no meat, no B12 supplements, right? And we're just going to get so weak that we can't physically resist, right? This passed the House. So this
is an abomination of words that shouldn't even exist, compiled together in any kind of attempt at anything. And the fact that it has reached this level of governance and possibility should be categorically unacceptable to every single Canadian, regardless of political stripe or awareness. This is a death sentence for Canadians, all in one tidy little bill.
All in one tidy little bill. And I don't know what the debate looked like, right? On this, right? I don't know if people know how to think like a maniac. That's what you get when you don't study history. Set out consultation with the Ministry of Transport. Oh, we all have to be in EVs. Oh, we all have to lose our cars. Like, once we lose our cars, can't fly, we're in the smart city. We're at their behest, right? The Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness and any other relevant ministers, the routes by which and rates which pass. So routes by, so however they're getting there, however pathogens might arrive, they get to govern.
You got to shut down the trains. The pathogens might go the same direction as the trains. Come on now, people. Got to stop them boats. No, Granny's got to die at home because the pathogen might follow the CO2 in your car if you try to drive across town to take Granny to the grocery store. Can't do that. It's for your safety.
Can't do that, right? And I had this article that I read that gardening can lead to climate change.
Right.
Right? So, domestic agriculture, growing crops, animals, growing animals for food, feedlots, getting into the forest, and, gardening. Summary of border-related measures that would be implemented to reduce any risk. So any risk at all. It can be infinitesimal. This is overly broad, unnecessary, and a war. This is a coup and a war on Canadians.
This is a we're going to lock you up if you don't stay if you don't agree with us that there's a commie behind every blade of grass that might kill you.
Yeah.
This is literally 50 years of that rhetoric revamped and reattached to boogeymen and spooks that are going to hide behind every blade of grass. So we must completely immobilize and destroy society as we know it. Don't breathe.
Don't do anything. Please don't do anything. And the best scientific information available, this is why, go to T.H. Chan, Harvard School of Public Health, where they make these huge leaps in logic to get to the fact that we can't have rural anything. We can't do anything. So this has to go to the Hutterites. This has to go to the Mennonites. This has to go to anybody who thinks funding and taking all our money and sending it abroad under, global equity. This has to go to people who are in agriculture. This has to go to restaurateurs, people who think serving meat on the plate, right? This has to go to moms. This has to go to dads.
This has to go to everybody that eats.
Right?
Literally.
Now, and then the Ministry of Health can ratchet, right, the pandemic prevention preparedness plan at least once every 3 years, right? And so I'm going to wrap up shortly because I'm going to back to 2 more podcasts to talk about this.
Well, this is just a conversation starter and a good place for people to, we started off on the right foot. Know what to expect from your elected representative. They're going to call you a conspiracy theorist. They're going to redirect you to a place and page that doesn't exist. There is no video. I went and looked for it myself as well. It doesn't exist. And obfuscate and deny until you get frustrated and give up. And that's giving up. Surrender is due to frustration is no longer acceptable if you eat in Canada.
Okay, so this is what your email says. I do not consent to this plan. This plan must not be approved at the Senate. This plan is a war on GDP for the following reasons. This plan is a war on agriculture for the following reasons. This plan allows for the expropriation of property and therefore is a war on property. This plan creates the necessity for debt, right? And therefore massive inflation. This plan gives control to public health, who deserve none of our control over this broad area of our lives, right? Public health failed in the last pandemic. They do not get through a One Health approach on animal, ecosystem, plant, human, and government interface. They don't get to regulate that for me. The end. Do not approve this plan. You'd have to be a maniac, hater of Canada and the state to vote yes on this plan. You'd have to dislike all your future progeny, and you'd have to dislike every element of your ancestors who worked so hard to be alive and to pass on the best to you. And this isn't about race, religion. This is about all hands on deck. And I really, really hope the Indigenous community weighs in here, because how can they say, the government, right? Let's be anti-colonialism while bringing in the most amount of migrants ever, right?
We have got a bunch of compromised individuals that have captured our country, and we need to understand that if you live here, you owe no allegiance to these captors, and we must stand up and resist this policy en masse. Every single person that calls themselves a Canadian has to resist this policy. This one in C-63 that ends Canada.
No, let's go back to one thing. God doesn't give us all this information, this knowledge, this ability, right, if he didn't also set out a path for us to win. So I believe that I believe that I believe that we can. I believe that we can win, and we're going to win because we're going to respond to an all hands on deck moment the right way. If we could have prevented the first one, would you have done it? You would have done it. So do it now. And I've got to go. So can we do this again sometime soon, Wayne?
I think that there's going to be lots to talk about in the coming days for sure, Lisa. Thank you for finding some time to help us get plugged in and get, eliminate a bunch of that noise and help our community here get some of the, the bonding between some of the dots. So I think this gives people out there a great place to start. So thank you again for giving us a dissection and interpretation of the legalese that we just go, when we see it. Yeah. So yes, we will absolutely do this again sometime real soon. And
okay. So thank you so much, Wayne.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Wow. If that isn't like taking a drink from a fire hose, I don't know what is. Until next time. Okay, guys, we had to tape that this afternoon, and there was a technical glitch in the playback. So, we can talk about a bazillion things that are going wrong, that are getting dissected, getting destroyed. The war on Canada, there's a million different things that we can talk about. Not everybody's on the same page or has the same level of knowledge and information. And when it comes to dissecting bills and stuff, not many of us have the time to spend the time chewing apart these things and understanding and looking at them from whether we like it or not, whether we believe in it or not, the jurisdictions that they use to oppress us and to implement these, as far as I'm concerned, evil and diabolical plans that they're commencing full steam ahead on. And excuse me. So I hope when there seems to be this giant question, why won't Trudeau resign? Why does Jagmeet Singh get all the credit for keeping him propped up just for his pension? No, this is bigger than just Jagmeet's pension. This is about them being this close to having these bills pushed through the Senate. This is Bill C-239. I'm going to pull it up here for everybody again, just to help everybody get a little bit more familiar with it, because this is critically important, and I want for people to know what we're addressing right now. Absolutely, they're tripping, they're power tripping, and they're desperate to get these bills in. They've got 9 years invested in this, and the big glaring targets in the crosshairs right now is when people start getting outraged about this. When they finally start getting plugged in, they're going to be unplugging us and criminalizing and demonizing us for trying to resist this in the social media platforms, right? And both of these bills are what are their pivots and cornerstones to the implementation of what they have on deck. So these are in my opinion, the existential point of focus, the SOS, stop our Senate priorities, that we've got a couple of weeks to get ahead on, simply because the court of public opinion is in the winds right now. When we get loud enough and organized enough and cohesive enough against specific things, we have the ability to at least gain their attention. They're paying attention right now, believe it or not, 100%, and not just for the other travesties they're taking part in. But these are the ones that Trudeau desperately needs to get in before he's removed from power. So this is why the bigger reason why Jagmeet Singh is continuing to keep him propped up, because they are all part of the penetration of the WEF Fourth Reich cabinet called the Liberal Party of Canada. And it is a unity party, and we've been swinging for the fences with some of the stuff that we've been breaking down over the last couple of weeks, and there's going to be more. But this is one that every Canadian can rightfully refuse to be dismissed for bringing to a demand to attention and refusal to take part in. So all of this stuff is going to be, again, like every day we do a show here. It's available on the Substack, whatsupcanada.substack, or whichever way it goes, substack.whatsupcanada, but it's on the website, whatsupcanada.org. But this is an all hands on deck, guys. This is a real simple one that we need to get our communities wrapped around maintaining the public narrative. Every wants to be new electorate coming in. All of the campaign slogans and jargon, they're only really listening right now. If and when they get their seats, they're not going to be listening. So we have to bring up this one and C63. Not telling anybody what to do, but these are the ones that you're going to be hearing a lot about from us, because this one here in particular, what makes it so diabolical is this implements and cements, if it's passed, the climate change, all of the things that Lisa discussed are now under the policy implemented and dreamt up by Geneva, Switzerland, not by any freaking Canadians. And this is where we have to get real loud. And they're going to try and shut us down with Bill C-63. So this is why Trudeau is stacking the deck, and Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh continues to prop this all up, because they are both part of that infiltration. So I'm going to go over to a couple of comments, and any specific questions you guys can pop up here in the next couple of seconds that you can think of. Otherwise, that's all I wanted to cover tonight. Tomorrow will be more shenanigans in the swamp. Absolutely, they are desperate. They are absolutely desperate, and this comes back to they're going to stop calling us crazy. It's not going to be misinformation. It's going to be malinformation, which is information the state doesn't approve of or does not like, right? And this is the two primary objectives that they were delivered in January in Geneva was to rebuild the trust, expect the resistance, and yeah, that was it, wasn't it? Pretty much in a nutshell. And they're absolutely desperate, and Trudeau's desperate, and they haven't got time to rebuild all of this again. So this is we're kind of at the pinnacle of the insanity. There's some different protests and stuff going on, guys. It's getting hard to keep up, but I'll do the best I can for everybody. So let's see here. What do I got here? A couple of quick messages for everybody. There's all kinds of stuff coming down the pipe, guys, and I don't have a real big grip on it, but yeah, okay, here we go. The link to the Substack tomorrow, everything that we talked about, Lisa and I today, will be on there. I haven't seen James's Substack published yet, but that will definitely be in correlation, more documentation, more backing this up. Arming all of everybody out there, empowering you guys with the actual factual information that you need to stop being dismissed. None of this is theory. We have got mountains of material to suggest that you are correct, and this, it's up to us. It's up to us. They're all, oh, that's another show. But people want to talk about ultimate solutions. That's a whole other discussion. The silver bullet, we talked about that last Wednesday. But go check it out on the Substack. You'll find everything there. If you just found us, I hope you find value in what we do. There'll be more coming this week. Stay tuned on the Clown World. If you have something that we can get in, fits into what we're doing here, that's whistleblower, whatever the case might be, that's the best way to get a hold of me. Through email is contact@whatsupcanada.org, and this is a crowd-sourced, crowd-funded platform, like most of the independent, authentic guys that are just trying to get the truth to everybody out there. We suck at turning these into business platforms. This is never about business. It's about arming you guys to try to save at what matters most to us, and shed light and rip the band-aids and the carpets and the carpets off of the conspiracy and the crimes being perpetrated against everybody. I'm not really a big one for amnesty. I'm pretty much a hashtag no amnesty kind of guy. I'd love to see people get behind a hashtag stop our Senate. And I think I should put up a real quick banner for that, just because I think that's going to be a way that we can help people get coordinated. So when you go onto a new platform or any platform over the next couple of days and you want to talk about this bill and this discussion and bring Canadians together to a laser focus over the next couple of weeks to say this evil insanity needs to hit the shredder, like not now, but right now. And while they're at it and they've got the shredders warmed up, stuff Bill C-63 down that as well, because what these documents represent are absolutely the end of, full stop, everything and all of our ability to grow, to eat, to survive, and to disagree with the abuse. This is within the rules of the arena that they're allowing us to still argument in without getting more base humans. So this is critical. I don't think anybody wants to see anything horrible happen. So we need to get behind this kind of stuff, not now, but right now, particularly this Bill C-293. And yeah, we'll see what kind of craziness they have dreamt up for everybody tomorrow. Same time, same place, 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern. And yeah, stay mighty, my friends, patriots, family, fellow, ungovernable and prisoners, however you identify. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.